Okay, here we are with Danielle Mackinnon from DanielleMackinnon.com. Mackinnon spelled Mackinnon. You know, I'm sure a lot of people get that wrong, right, Danielle?
Yep, they get it wrong. My old last name was a lot easier.
What was
that? It was 4 letters, C-O-V-E.
That was a lot easier. Anyways, welcome to Afterlife TV. We really appreciate you being here to answer this question that so many people have, which is, you know, do our pets go to the afterlife? Why don't we get right to it? We'll start with that broad question. You can answer it however you want, and then we'll sort of break it apart as we go along. How would you answer that? Because I'm sure this is a question you get quite often by email and you know, from your clients. What happens to the animals that we love when they die? Do they just disappear? Poof, you know, no more?
Yep, disappear, poof. I don't really have a job.
That's it. That's it. Well, thank you for coming, Danielle. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you another time.
Right, okay, bye.
Bye. No, seriously, you know, obviously, there's a lot of people who believe in life after death, but they think of it in terms of people. But when it comes to animals, they're not really sure what to think.
I really do get asked this question all the time. That people want to know that their animal who passed over is safe, or is happy, or is okay. And the best way I can answer it is basically to give you a yes. There is a place where animals spend their time after they've passed. I don't know if we can exactly call it time, but they spend their time there, and we're able to connect with them. I'm able to ask them how they're doing. They're able to talk from that place. You know, it's actually funny. I have animal communication students because I teach people how to do animal communication, and a lot of the time I'll have them practice with an animal, but I won't tell them the animal has crossed over.
Yeah.
Because everybody freaks out. They're like, I can't talk to a dog who's crossed. You know, so I don't tell them. I don't, and it saves a lot of grief actually, because people get really worried.
Yeah.
And everybody is able to connect with that animal on the other side. So it's pretty cool. The other neat thing about that is I'll ask people, okay, when they're connecting with an animal on the other side, I'll say, what's it look like where they live? What's their everyday existence like? And they will describe, for dogs, they describe this like, literally like dog utopia. There's big huge logs and trees and lots of food and water and bunny, and like it's like literally like you would think in Bambi, you know, the movie Bambi, when everything looks all nice and sweet. It's kind of like
right.
Dog heaven. And people get really comforted by that.
Yeah.
But what I tell them about that is that it's really just a layer that the animals use to communicate that they're safe and happy on the other side. Because really underneath that layer of the trees and the logs and the rainbows and things like that is just a beautiful home light feeling. And I've talked with animals about that, and that's the truth. That's like the essence of where they are, but it's very hard for us as humans to understand.
Okay. All right, we'll get more into detail about that in a minute. Why don't, you know, can you draw the line for us, though? I mean, we talk about pets, and usually people think cats and dogs, and I don't know how far they go, maybe horses. Where do we draw the line as far as what animals go to the afterlife? You know, what about insects and birds and fish? Where do we draw the line, if anywhere?
There is no line. There is no line. It's, in my experience, it's every animal, every insect, every fish. It's everybody with a consciousness can cross to the other side and can actually still be connected to and communicated with. There is no line. I've not been able to not reach someone. I've kind of connected in and had an animal be like, yeah, I'm not interested in talking. I crossed over 30 years ago. You know, I'm all set, or this isn't the right time for this person to connect with me, etc. But animals can. All animals. I mean, that's cheetahs and zebras and, you know, amoeba. All right, but I haven't tried to communicate with an amoeba.
I've never had a pet amoeba either. So,
right.
but spiders, I'm sure spiders are the one exception, right? Because I have no problem, you know. Well, we won't even get into that. Listen, me and
ticks.
Spiders, I have issues with spiders. You know
For me, it's ticks. I have a hard time with ticks.
Okay, all right. So no love lost with the ticks if they're not going to the afterlife. But no, I get it. So all animals are going to the afterlife. So does this mean then that all animals have souls? And if so, how would you define soul? What does it mean to have a soul?
I would define soul as that part of the energy that stays intact even when the body leaves. So when the body has deteriorated or stopped functioning, there is this energy that continues on that has a certain signature to it. And that I define as the soul. And we know people have souls, but every animal has a soul as well. Every insect, every mammal, every bird, they all have souls. And they all have souls that work in a slightly different way than our human souls.
Oh, interesting. Do you want to get into that, or is that a little too in depth for an interview like this? How would they be different?
Well, animal souls, and when I say animal souls, I mean animals, mammals, birds, insects. I mean the whole deal.
Yep.
Anything that's not human. They have a purpose in coming here, and their purpose is to teach humans. So whereas humans came here, we're here, our souls are here to be enlightened, to become a high vibrating, beautiful, loving soul, to learn our lessons. Animal souls are here to help teach humans their lessons. So the overall purposes between the two souls are different, but they work together.
Interesting. All right. There's another thing that I do want to go back on, because I just want to work our way up. Anybody that this might be new for will work their way up to that in a moment. So is there a difference between when you're thinking of it? Is there a difference between a soul and a spirit?
A spirit, to me, I don't really use the word spirit that often, because spirit so often includes the personality along with the ego, along with all of the pluses and minuses that came along with that personality. If you think of like a spirit that's here, if you're connecting with a spirit, you might connect with your deceased loved grandmother, and she might come in and say, "What are you doing seeing that man?"
Right.
And so she's got all of her opinions. She's not really working at that higher level.
Yep.
So when I'm talking about souls, I'm talking about that higher, deeper level that we often as humans don't go to. We humans tend to stay in more of that ego-y area, where we're more concerned with the everyday details, but the soul is more concerned with the big picture and the evolution of that being.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense to me. I never really thought of it in that way. I love that description of it. So yeah, when we're talking about spirit, we're talking about really a specific ego, really, if you think about it. The spirit of who they were when they were here. As a soul, though, it incorporates all the lifetimes that being might have experienced, right?
Yeah.
What evidence do you have then? You discussed some of it, but if you give some personal examples of evidence that you have that animals are in the afterlife. Because there's going to be some people who will say that you might be, it might be like ESP. You're picking up on the memories of the person that you're giving the reading to, that sort of a thing. How do you know that you're actually connecting with this animal in the afterlife? And give us some examples of what has happened when you're communicating with an animal in the afterlife.
How do I know that I'm connecting with an animal in the afterlife and it's not a memory or ESP about it? Actually, the biggest way is faith. My intention is to connect with the animal, and this is what I teach my students. I want to connect with the animal, so I'm going to connect with the animal. If I spend my time worrying that I'm connecting with a memory, I'm more likely to connect with a memory. It's definitely, you bring up a legitimate thing, but I teach people to have faith in their intention, and that their intention is everything. So, there's not a way. A memory is going to look different. It's going to feel different. It's going to be from the person's point of view, whereas the information that I'm getting from the animal is going to be specifically from that animal's point of view. So there would be a difference. If the memory almost matches too well with the human's point of view, it would be like if it was a memory, and this really doesn't happen. Because of the intention thing. But if it was a memory, let's say the memory would be, I would be sitting at a dinner table eating food, handing the food down to the dog. If it was from the dog would say, I loved being at the dinner table. looking up for the food. You know, I'm going to get it from that animal's point of view, not the human's point of view.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't run into it very often, and my students don't either, because I teach them to have that trust in themselves, that just say what you want to receive. I want to receive from the animal, and that you do. It's not a I know you with how your logical mind thinks. It's an easy thing to come up with that it's a mistake that would happen, but it's not a frequent. It doesn't happen. It's not common at all.
Yeah. Now, and I know this happens with people, but I'm not sure about animals. Do they ever give you information maybe the person isn't aware of either? So for instance, I know with people, I'll use a people example. Maybe you can use an animal example. You know, a person in spirit comes through to a medium and tells them, we'll say, about something that happened, like another person died, that the sitter, the client, knows, but that client wasn't aware that person had died yet. They're finding out through the spirit, through the medium. Has that ever happened with you? So
it happens all the time.
Really?
But not in that way. And I think the difference is because what you're talking about is human to human,
yeah,
or human to person on the other side. And what I'm talking about is human to animal soul.
Right.
And since the animal souls are concerned with the big picture, and they're concerned with all this evolution of our human souls, the way they would deliver the message, let's say, I was working with a woman and her dog, and the dog would say something to me like, you know, there's an imbalance in the relationship, and your boyfriend's attention isn't all focused on you, it's focusing other places as well. You know, the dog would be telling me that, rather than your husband's having an affair or your boyfriend's having an affair, because they deliver all the messages with love. I think when you're actually dealing with people and with deceased loved people, they sometimes the message gets delivered a little bit more alarmingly or dramatically, whereas, yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
You see it on TV.
Right, yeah, right.
But the animals choose to deliver the message in a way that could actually help heal the person through the information. So it happens all the time that the person learns new information about themselves, or about their life, or about their children, but it happens in such a way that it doesn't set the person off like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened.
Yeah.
Because the animals are so concerned with making sure everything results in a forward evolution.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. You know, I bring up the question because I know there's skeptics out there, or people who are even slightly skeptical, and you know, the ESP thing is something that often comes up with skeptics. You know, the medium or the psychic is reading the person's mind. Actually, I don't even know. I've never seen that. I've never actually seen anybody who has been able to read my mind. I've tested hundreds of psychics and mediums. Nobody has been able to read my mind.
Well, that's what I was thinking is, you know, I'm like actually pretty super psychic. I can't do that.
Exactly.
Like what?
I haven't met anybody who can, and yet, you know, it's a typical. It's like, you know, skeptics love to go there. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, just because it's hard for some people, you know, it's easier for us to think that we can read one another's minds than to think that we can actually communicate with someone in the spirit world, because to even believe in the spirit world is a giant leap from that, you know. Yeah. All right, but getting back to the animals and the afterlife, I'm just curious. I know you've been with animals as they've been passing during a natural death.
Yeah.
Sad in some ways, although I experienced it about a year and a half ago with a cat, and it was a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Are there stages that take place at the time of death if it's a natural death? And what are those stages that they sort of go through?
That's a great question. And, you know, you noticed that when you asked me, when you started talking about this, rather than getting all serious, I noticed I was doing a big smile.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And it's because...
and you have a nice smile, so that works out
good. That's good. It's because my experiences with death, with animals passing over, is so positive. That for me, when I think of an animal crossing over, I actually feel good. Yeah. So we're going to start talking about the phases and how this all works. And it's, for me, on the inside, I'm like, oh my God, I love talking about this because it's so cool what happens. There's a few things. One is an animal always knows that they're going to cross over. Always. They always know. They'll know weeks beforehand. I've met so many people, though, who've come to me and said, well, I talked to an animal communicator, and they said that my horse said it was an accident. And I have not experienced that. What I've experienced is, the animal says, yep, it was my time. I'd completed my work with my human, and it was ready to move on. So they choose the time. They choose the method as well, meaning if it's going to be fast, if it's going to be slow, if it's going to be long and drawn out, if it's going to be through a disappearance. All of these things are based on what they feel will work best for their human in terms of helping their human evolve. Oh. On top of that, now we get to the point where they're actually going to cross over. A lot of animals will, if they're with me, they'll ask me to, actually, let me change that. If the animal's with me because the human wants them to be with me, the animal will give the human a list of things that they, that would help them to cross over. Okay. I'd like to be in this place, or have this person here, or hear this music, or be in this position, or go to the bed, or not. But what I found is those things are great, but if the animal didn't have them, it wasn't the end of the world. Because I've talked to animals who both were able to make requests and have the requests granted, yep, and made requests and didn't have the request granted, and both were happy, both were fine on the other side, both totally understood it. It feels like making requests is more of a like something to help them bond and feel closer to and help their human along as, yep, they cross over. Right. So now we get to the part where they're actually going to cross over, and what it depends on the death, how it works. Yep. If it's something like a car accident, so the cat runs out in front of the car, in my experience, the animals have always told me, oh, I left my body just before impact. I was right outside my body then. Or when I got scared in the house and jumped up and screeched and then ran out the door, when I screeched, I left my body, and then I got hit by the car. So they're really not experiencing the pain that we see go on. If it's a long, slow death, such as an accident that results in an injury that kills them, or if it's a disease, yeah, they will stay in their body until their body is no longer comfortable to be in. And then their energy will kind of hang in, let's say half in, half out, tethered to the body, kind of like a balloon. Yeah. Which is a really cool thing. And then I've had a lot of people, I've helped them kind of say, all right, for a natural death, all right, let's help this animal. And they kind of cut that little tether, because the, yeah, animals say, yes, I'm ready to go. They cut that tether, and then the animal's able to cross over more quickly and easily. Interesting. How would you cut that tether? I mean, is it just, telling them it's okay to go, or? That is one way to do it. Really speaking with them and saying, it's okay, I release you, have a great time, I'll see you on the other side. Or you can visualize the energy as kind of like a little balloon above the animal, and just visualize using little scissors and cutting that tether. But you don't want to do it unless you really feel like, it's time. I feel like he wants to pass on his own. It's got to be the right moment. It's not like, okay, I'm done. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But some people will do that. I've had clients who found out their dog had cancer, and they were so worried that she was going to suffer, that the smallest thing happened, they were like, okay, we're going to put her to sleep because we don't want her to suffer. Yeah. And, and it was fine with her, but when I asked her about it, she said, well, it was fine, I could have gone on longer. She planned it, but at the same time, they had their own plan. Yeah, I understand that because, I went through that with my cat, Pesky. The name is Pesky, 22 years old. Certainly had lived a long life, and but I remember, most of us, it's one thing if we're going through pain, but it's even harder to watch someone else that you love going through pain. So yeah, it was obvious, we knew, we woke up that morning, we could tell this was the day she was on her way out. And my biggest concern was, first of all, I didn't want to move her to bring her to the vet, and because I thought that would just make matters worse, a lot of anxiety. Yep.
But then at the same time, I was worried that she was in a lot of pain because, organs are shutting down and stuff. That was obvious. And when I say obvious, I mean, she was fine. It's just, I guess that's what I was projecting, was that her organs were shutting down. So it wasn't obvious. Bad word. But I was concerned that she was in pain and that it might be better for her if she were helped along. In the end, I was glad that we did it the way we did it. She died on my lap, and me and my wife Melissa had kept putting her on each other's lap for a long time. This lasted a few hours till she finally went. But that was a question that went through our mind. Did we make the wrong choice? I was always worried that it would get so painful and I would have to be with her while she was in all this pain, knowing that I made the wrong choice. For me, that didn't happen. I'm sure that's happened at times where there's probably more pain involved. And so that question goes through your head. Let's talk about that. Let's talk euthanasia. When is it appropriate? When is it not appropriate? You kind of touched upon it, but how does someone make that choice?
I'm going to tell the story of a client who, she had a dog. He was 17 and he was very, very, very sick. And she knew it was time, but at the same time, she just wasn't ready. So he definitely had physical pain, but like I said, remember, he's not quite in his body, so the suffering isn't really as much as we would think.
Yeah.
So she let it go on a really long time, like I think it was 3 or 4 months, until finally there was no choice. Like
yeah.
He couldn't function and he had to be put down. And then she came to me for a session and she said, I just never want to go through that again. That was so horrible. I can't believe I did that. And I talked to him and I said, well, he wants you to learn from this. And he's saying that your other dog will give you a sign. So we talked to the other dog. The other dog did this. I can't remember what the sign was. It was like not eating dinner 3 nights in a row, or some very concrete sign, so that she would know when it was time. And sure enough, I heard from her a few months later on Facebook, and she said, "Thank you so much. It helped. It worked, and she didn't suffer. And I had to put her down, but I understood. So she needed that type of sign. Now notice that both of those animals were put to sleep, and it wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
Animals, they don't, getting put to sleep is no different from dying of a natural cause, dying of an accident. I mean, it's just another method that the animal chooses.
Yeah.
I don't run into animals saying, I shouldn't have been put to sleep, or why did you do that horrible thing? But I run into tons of people who are like, I can't believe I did it. I feel terrible. I've been feeling guilty for 15 years. And then we talked to the animal, and he was like, no, that was the right decision. I was all done. My body wasn't working, and I needed help.
Yeah.
So euthanasia is really just one of many choices according to the animals. Remember, the animal's choosing how it happens. So you may think you may think you figured out the right way with Pesky, but it wasn't really you.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, because she was fine the day before. She was fine. We wake up. It was a Sunday, and it was just like, I'm checking out today.
Yeah, all done, all set.
The interesting thing you talked about, maybe if someone's getting hit by a car or something, that cry, that takes place before. Pesky, just maybe seconds, or maybe it was a minute before she stopped breathing, let out this like one cry. She was quiet the whole morning, let out this one, and I was wondering what was going on at that moment. Was it her like hanging on?
No.
What do you think
that was? It's a really good question, because I can't tell you how many people say to me, I felt like it was the right decision. We took her to the vet, or she was just about to cross over my arms, and then I got a big burst of energy and a big sound or a big bark or squiggling around in my arms. It happens all the time, and and it's really cool what it is. Obviously, I don't feel upset about it. I think it's really cool. The how we talked about if an animal's crossing slowly and their energy kind of tethers in a balloon over them, and you have to cut that cord. It's the same kind of thing. There needs to be a big burst of energy in order to get that soul out of the physical body.
Sure.
So this is what you're witnessing, but the thing is, we as humans, we see it and we're like, oh my God, I did the wrong thing. You really wanted to live. Everybody freaks out, but it's really that burst in order to get out.
Yeah. People should notice, and I hope they do, take notice of your demeanor in talking about this. I mean, you know, to us, it's a very sad event. I'm sure you've lost pets. It's a very sad event.
Yes.
But in that way, because of our loss. But
Yep.
for them, and this is what you experience, you have that wonderful gift, really, to have experienced this with them. And I think anybody who has experienced the loss of a pet with you when you're working with them gets to experience this as well, is that it is a beautiful event. It's very natural, and the timing is perfect. I mean, pets are only with us for a short time, you know, and so it's not a sad thing the way you experience it.
Yeah.
And the way that they communicate it to you even afterwards, that this is just a beautiful, very natural thing that we're all going to go through. And I just think it's wonderful for people to take notice. When you talk about it, you are smiling, you have a smile on your face, and it's not like, oh, yeah, it was horrible. I have this story I'm going to tell you. It was horrible. You know, it's not about that at all, is it?
No.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say quickly about that is that when I ask the animals about it, they just consider death to be the next step.
Yeah.
You know, because the soul keeps going. It's just, all right, I've completed my work here, I've done my stuff with my humans, and I'm graduating and moving into the next school.
Sure.
They are not attached to it. In fact, the only negativity I've run into with animals about death is that they're concerned about, okay, I'm going to cross over in the next 2 months or so. I'm really worried about how Judy's going to handle it.
Right.
You know, I want to start preparing her. So they'll be concerned for their humans, but for themselves, it's as natural as going to the bathroom. It's just, you know, but it's more exciting than going to the bathroom.
Really? Well, for some people, maybe. All right. Well, so, you know, we compare the crossing over of people with, you know, crossing over of animals, and I can see that there's some differences there, but there's a lot of similarities. Is there ever anything that's similar to to a deathbed vision, where we hear about deathbed visions, where I'll just use the example of, you know, an elderly person, you know, is getting ready to pass, and they actually see their loved ones in spirit coming to welcome them home, sort of thing. Do you think that ever happens with pets, or is it sort of a lonely type of transition?
It's yes, but no. So what happens is, let's say I'm speaking with a pet, and I'm going by all this that I'm speaking about me speaking with pets because I'm not there for a lot of the actual passing.
Right.
But what will happen is I'll be talking, all right, so you're about ready, you want your death to go like this, you know, we're kind of planning it out, talking with the animal's human, and then the animal will say, and we'll list off so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, and this dog and that cat, you know, and we'll say, they're all here ready for me to come. So it's basically, it's not like a deathbed vision, it's more like they're so in touch already that they already know who's waiting for them. Which is, I think, a really cool thing, because not only does it help the animal be just comfortable, like, oh yeah, they're over there waiting for me, but it comforts the human to know that those beings, whether they're human or animal, are waiting as well.
All right. Oh, that's interesting. You know, in listening to you talk, I mean, it's obvious that animals are much more connected than we are as people, you know, at least most of us. And they come from such a higher perspective. And I think so many people are used to thinking of pets as a lower species of some sorts. You know, the way you talk, it's just the opposite. You know, they should be our gurus, you know, I mean, that's what it seems like. Is that really the way it works? Yep.
You're absolutely right. It's that they're here as our teachers. And well, you know what it is? Think of it like the animals are here to be in service to humans. Now, a lot of people view someone who's in service to them as lower than them. Going to a restaurant and treating the waiter, the lowly waiter, and not tipping them well because they're servicing you. You know, there's a lot of people out there who think like that. But it's a big deal to say, I'm going to dedicate myself to serving you. You know, this is this is what light workers do all the time, and it's also what animals are doing. I'm going to dedicate myself to serving humans, but it's a choice they've made. It's not they're lower and they're trying to get up to our level. They're actually trying to help us, and what they're trying to help us do is learn unconditional love. If you look at animals, that's what they open in humans. You know, they do it through many, many different ways, but that's what they bring out in humans. So this is not a lowly, oh, he's my companion and I love him so much. This is really, animals have the potential to open up people's hearts in ways that many people avoid at every turn.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I mean, because, well, just because I don't think there's a lot of people who really think of their pets in that way. And certainly,
I meet a lot of people who do.
Yeah, I'm sure. Your perspective is a little different than most people's, I think. But I think if all of a sudden we could start to look at our animals in that way, it changes our relationship. You know, no question about it, to think of them in that way. But the other thing, which is related to this, like going back to that question about deathbed visions. So it sounds, because they have this higher perspective, which is a higher perspective all the time, therefore they don't need to have deathbed visions, because they're more in connection with the spirit world, we'll say, than we are as humans, because we have this sort of I don't know, it's like our memory of that sort of thing gets erased at a certain point in our childhood. I don't know, but animals never really lose that. What's that?
Humans have so if we have a curtain between the other side,
curtain,
and
great
a
word.
Curtain, we humans have a much thicker curtain than animals. Animals' curtain is pretty much see-through. You know, it's still there, but it's see-through, so they can hang out in both planes a lot.
Yeah.
They connect with, you know, I meet a lot of people who say, well, does he miss, you know, Chewy, who died 3 years ago? I think he misses Chewy. And I'll talk to the animal, and I was like, I don't miss Chewy's here like 5 times a week. I don't miss Chewy. Chewy's kind of annoying. So, you know, they're just in and out, back and forth very easily. We humans, since we're working on learning unconditional love, and we're learning it through, let's say, having challenges as humans,
Yep.
that curtain has to be thicker.
Yeah.
So animals can do it much more easily. So you can see how with a thinner curtain, crossing over is not going to be as big of a deal to them.
Right.
It's just a shift in the energy.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about after-death communication. There's a great book out there called Hello from Heaven by Bill and Judith Guggenheim. And they talk about all the signals and signs that people send us from the spirit world to try to let us know that they're there. And I wondered if pets do this sort of thing as well. Do they try to send us signs and signals to let us know that they're around us?